How do you make a hero? Do you need to follow a recipe to make one? Is it one part valor, one part cunning, and a half part of circumstance? Or is it something else entirely? To me, a hero displays a stalwart heart of courage, level-headed control over their power, and uses their wisdom to create change for the world. That being said, it doesn't necessarily mean a hero has to be courageous at the start of their adventure. They may not necessarily know their own strength, and obviously, they don't have to be looking at the bigger pictures to see change. They don't have to understand why they've been set on their journey. All that matters is that they face the terrors that would happen across their path. A perfect example of an unlikely protagonist being forged into a true hero of legend would be Link from the Legend of Zelda series. All incarnations of the soul of the hero displays aspects for being a true hero of legend, but there is one that exemplifies the qualities that true heroes exhibit. Come with me and take a leap into the open sky of the Isle of the Goddess. Hi there everybody, my name is Hellios. Thank you for joining me for the premiere of my newest series, Notices of Nostalgia, where I dissect video games that I find interesting or games I know an unhealthy amount about. Some of you may be wondering, why are you starting a review series in 2024? And my response would have to be, equal parts analysis paralysis and passion project. I've been tossing around this idea for this series for a while now, but I just decided that, well, if I don't do it now, when am I actually going to do it? So how am I grading my reviews? I have created a 10-point system, 10 being the highest and 1 being the lowest, based on the following criteria: gameplay, music, ambiance, themes, and impact. The gameplay section, in its simplest terms, will be talking about the controls of the reviewed game, how the game handles when being played, and my overall thoughts. Music was pretty self-explanatory, but we'll be discussing a couple of music tracks and how they affect the overall mood of the game. Ambiance is primarily based around the concept of level design and the atmosphere of different locations in the game based on how it works as a separate entity and how it works in tandem with the rest of the game. The next section of themes will be covering the thematic motifs that appear throughout the course of the game, mainly focusing on the main character, the supporting cast, and the game's antagonist. Last but not least will be the impact section. You may be wondering what I mean by impact, but it's pretty standard. This section is split into 2 distinct parts. Number 1, the game's impact on the series, meaning lore and future titles. Number 2, the game's impact on me, both in the past and present day. With all that being said, let us dive into the world of Skyward Sword. To even start playing Skyward Sword, the most important thing you'll need is the Wii Motion Plus. This small dongle first came onto the scene when it was announced at E3 in 2008, and subsequently was released in 2009. The Wii Motion Plus was supposed to make the Wiimote feel more responsive to the actual movements of your arm. With that being said, I feel as if Skyward Sword uses the Wii Motion Plus to its fullest potential, especially with the hardware's limitations. Skyward Sword definitely grants you moments of being completely immersed in the world through dynamic combat and clever solutions to puzzles using the motion controls. I legitimately felt as if I were the one swinging the goddess sword throughout a majority of the playthrough. There's definitely a learning curve, especially with the swordplay, don't get me wrong, but if you actively learn how to swing your sword instead of swinging it haphazardly, please don't even mention the yellow choo-choos. You'll find a satisfying gameplay experience. For the other items that you obtain throughout your journey, the motion controls do tend to get desync if you're not using them regularly enough. However, when the controls do desync or get overstimulated with all your inputs, you're easily able to remedy it with a single press down on the D-pad. A personal favorite item of mine has to be the Hero's Bow. Even if Fledge's pumpkin pull minigame did kill some of my enjoyment for the item, I thought it was an interesting choice to allow the player to pull back the bowstring by pulling back the nunchuck itself. Speaking about the nunchuck, all of the movement on the ground is controlled by it. While the nunchuck isn't necessarily bad, I do find that the movement tends to be a little bit clunky, especially when you're trying to move quickly, as well as turning around the camera. It feels like it's some sort of chore that you continually forget to do until you realize that you have guests coming over and you hide your shame by stuffing it away into a random closet. The second form of movement is your Crimson Loftwing, which you use to traverse the skies. Honestly, this may be a little contentious, but I actually like the jankiness of the flying on the Loftwing. It's not perfect to be sure, but there is something about being able to fly in most directions on a giant bird that makes my inner child giddy. The backtracking, sure, is annoying, but the gameplay allows the openness of the skies to evolve as the narrative progresses. You're able to continually expand your own horizons in the sky and on the ground as you progress through the game. Skyward Sword was the second to last game in the Zelda franchise that contained the classic Zelda formula, while still acting as a stepping stone into the newer generation of Zelda titles, with features like durability, stamina, and motion controls that we see in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. While there is a certain level of linearity in Skyward Sword that you especially don't see in the newer titles, it does promote a healthy narrative plot thread for the protagonist to follow from awkward youth to a forged hero. In terms of gameplay, I would have to rate Skyward Sword an 8.5 out of 10. The dynamic combat and the problem solving is slightly hampered by the overall clunkiness of the movement engine. However, throughout the game, by the time I was in Lyanra, these movement issues slowly became non-existent. Next, let's move on to... The Legend of Zelda franchise is well known for the plethora of iconic OSTs that have ingrained themselves into our collective subconscious, ranging from the beautiful ballads that we've heard in Skyward Sword to the iconic theme of the original Legend of Zelda on the Famicom and the NES. Overall, the music of the game does completely add a new experience for the player. Without the music for the date that you go on with Zelda before she's taken to the surface, it definitely feels flat and leaves a lot more to be desired. However, if you add the music back into the scene, it creates a tapestry of connection and genuine love between Link and Zelda before the disaster strikes. The way that I see it, as we progress throughout the game, the music also progresses with us. We can see the bright and light music of Skyloft transform into the curious music of the Sealed Grounds to the genuinely playful experience that is the Faron Woods. I believe that this change in the music is also indicative of Link's journey and how the circumstances of the journey quickly change into something dire and pressing. I totally believe that there is a tonal shift in the music in the latter half of the game. You're able to hear it as soon as you continue your quest to find the Sacred Flames in the 3 regions. I believe the music team knew what they were doing in order to signify something darker, yet also protect the heroic aspects that the journey was taking on throughout the music as well. My rating for the music section would be 10 out of 10. Next, we have... As the true start to our adventure, the Faron Woods are a friendly beginning to ease the player into an unknown world. It provides a healthy, lush environment for Link to fight basic enemies, let the player get a better handle at the controls, and grants the player new features to test out like dowsing. The Kikwis found in the region are genuinely so cute, and while they don't have a large part in the narrative, they are a large stepping stone in building up the surface as a foreign environment to the Skyloftians that came to the surface. After leaving the nest of the Kikwis, Link heads into the deep woods where we can find our first dungeon, the mysterious and completely overgrown Skyview Temple. This ruinous temple acts as the first real test for players to challenge their puzzle-solving abilities, while introducing more difficult enemies like the Stalfos. The Skyview Temple is a perfect representation of ambiance in Skyward Sword because it's completely immersive. I totally felt like I was engrossed in the feeling that I was in a long-forgotten temple trying to find my way through it. The Elden region continues the trend of great immersion, with bokoblin camps slowly popping up across the different caverns and on the high mountain ridges as the enemy forces continue their desperate search for Zelda. The volcanic activity that litters the Elden region creates a vibrant yet lethal territory, and with the bonflowers that are peppered throughout the land, can act as devices for extremely cool puzzle solving. The treasure-seeking Mogmas make this region their home, and with their humor and wit, they definitely earned a highlight in my eyes. However, I think that both of the dungeons that are found in the Elden region fall short in terms of my enjoyment. While there are cool moments like taking a leap of faith into an open sea of lava, these dungeons really are pretty interchangeable in my eyes. Next, we come to the Lianru region, an expansive desert in the western part of the surface. The remnants of an ancient civilization can be found scattered around the entirety of the map, along with something quite special: the decaying circuitry of the LD-301 series mining robots, and an exceedingly rare deposit of azure stones called timeshift stones. By hitting these stones, it creates an area of effect that reverts time. It can revitalize the mining robots to past versions of themselves. This is a really cool concept to explore in Skyward Sword, but there's also a theory going around that the Ocarina of Time was actually made from these timeshift stones. But I digress. As for the ambience of the desert, I know it's supposed to be empty on purpose because of the timeshift stones and you can see what it was like back in the ancient day, but it was sort of an extreme pain for me to backtrack through the quicksand, and it overall gave me an icky feeling, especially with stuff like the Sand Sea. Last, but certainly not least, we need to talk about the ambiance of Skyloft. I personally believe that Skyloft is one of the best hubs in the Legend of Zelda franchise, especially with how often you have to return to the skies. Skyloft is a vast tapestry of life in the era of the sky, filled with so many different pieces of lore, side quests, and exploration. I can't get enough of the iconic music and the aesthetics. My rating for the ambiance for Skyward Sword is an 8 out of 10. Next, onto... My mind always comes back to one singular theme that is continually present throughout the entirety of the events of Skyward Sword: reincarnation. The Oxford Dictionary defines reincarnation as a person or animal in whom a particular soul is believed to have been reborn. This concept is fundamentally woven into the story of Skyward Sword and the Legend of Zelda franchise. While there's a ton of information linking Zelda to reincarnation, Link, Girahim, and Demise are intrinsically linked to that reincarnation as well. At the beginning of the game, Link is an awkward teen who can be categorized as lazy. I mean, who isn't from time to time, but he isn't the most likely hero. I believe it is in the course of the adventure Link loses that innocence when he is faced with trials and tribulation. He sheds his naivete to forge himself into a hero worthy of Hylia's blessing, further playing into another theme of good versus evil, but also laying the groundwork for future incarnations of the soul of the hero. Each incarnation bears the same courageous spirit, while their stories are vastly different. Girahim, Demise's loyal servant, seeks nothing but to bring his Dark Master back and serve him for eternity. So he hunts Zelda tirelessly in hopes to achieve his goals. This single-minded attempt to resurrect his master leads Girahim to travel to the past after Demise has been slain in present day for one last-ditch effort, and it pays off. Girahim resurrects Demise so he can continue his campaign to eradicate the surface's inhabitants and rule over them for eternity. Link, the hero chosen by Hylia, is the only thing standing in Demise's way. After a grueling battle for the fate of the surface, only one stands victorious: Link. With his final breath, Demise howls a curse that will change reality forever.
Those who share the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero, they are eternally bound to this curse, an incarnation of my hatred shall ever follow your kind, dooming them to wander the blood-soaked sea of darkness for all time.
In the end, the curse sets the scene for the rest of the series and its continued battles with Demise's spirit, which inhabits Ganondorf and other villains. As this is the canonical beginning for the game series, the idea of reincarnation sets the scene for thematic motifs of choice versus destiny in the following titles in the franchise. I love this idea that the threat of darkness looms over the land of Hyrule, but it leaves me wanting more. Low-key, I wanted to have Ganondorf in Tears of the Kingdom have a redemption arc to break the cycle of hatred and reincarnation that he finds himself in. With that all being said, the themes that surround reincarnation in Skyward Sword fully demonstrate the cyclical nature of fate, destiny, and the fragility of free will. It creates a compelling story for the franchise, definitely, but it does feel like a cop-out for the narrative of later titles. My rating for the theme section of Skyward Sword, 7.5 out of 10. Next, on to... As the canonical start of the Legend of Zelda franchise, Skyward Sword lays the groundwork for the series with a powerful lineage of monsters, villains, heroes, divinity, and most important of all, a curse that ties the land of Hyrule together. I like to believe that Skyward Sword has had a definite influence for the direction that this series has ended up going in. This story, this premiere, this conception solely rides along the idea of tying all the series' prior releases into a cohesive, yet arguably messy timeline. Games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, as I see it, are derived from the same cut of cloth as Skyward Sword. The latter paved the path for the former to spread its metaphorical wings and soar, but also allows effective, even though Tears of the Kingdom has some narrative flaws, to allow an openness in expressing a new kind of Zelda story through the open world map. The next part I would like to talk about is my personal connection with the game. As a younger video game enthusiast, the Legend of Zelda series had never really caught my fancy. It wasn't in the forefront of my mind like Pokemon was. Like Pokemon was this huge phenomenon with the anime and how marketable it is and was. I never had that closeness to the Legend of Zelda series like I did with Pokemon, until I was in middle school at least. Around that time, my friends were starting to play more of the Legend of Zelda games, and it started to pique my interest. That summer, my dad was attending a conference for his doctorate in Paris, and he invited me along for about a week. We had fun walking and exploring the city, but we found this small little bookstore near the Sorbonne. He bought me a book. It was called The Hyrule Historia. It was in English. While he was attending all of his lectures, I voraciously tore through this book. Skyward Sword was a huge feature, especially with all the behind the scenes of Skyward Sword's art direction. I was immediately hooked. I knew there was something changing. As soon as we got back to the States, I went to get a copy of Skyward Sword and a Wii Motion Plus. I'm thankful for that experience because it was the first real step into changing my outlook on gaming as an art form rather than just entertainment. While Skyward Sword definitely isn't a perfect game, it's the story I fell in love with. It provided such clarity that the story is an integral force to drive a piece of media into a true work of art. I really think I wouldn't trade it for anything in this world. My rating for the impact section is 10 out of 10. As we're coming to the end of this video, I want to thank you for listening to my endless ramblings. This series is purely a thing of passion for video games as a hobby and a means to help my creative side with video production. Any support is graciously accepted, but not necessary. After tallying up the scores for Skyward Sword, we're sitting at 44 points total out of 50, or a B+ at 88%. Skyward Sword has its fair shares of highs and lows, but the high points of Skyward Sword healthily overshadow its lows. The Hero of the Skies has to be one of my favorite incarnations of the hero in the Legend of Zelda series, because this hero is acting out of selfless love for Zelda. This love takes a lazy, slobbish adolescent and breaks him down into a fine material for him to build himself back up into a dauntless warrior and hero to save the day. While I like a bit more substance in my character development in books and other media, Skyward Sword encapsulates a true love and an honorable courage that I find simply irresistible. Like I said prior, Skyward Sword may not be the perfect Zelda game, but its narrative strengths has earned its merit in my eyes completely. This game, it was just a beginning for me. It helped me see gaming as more than just a hobby and as something else entirely. It demonstrates artistry. One day, I hope to emulate the same kind of artistry in my own literary endeavors, gaming spaces, and other creative works. Once again, my name is Hellios. Thank you for watching. See you around next time.